Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and today I'm going to be telling you the story of this Rover 820 Vitesse. Rover's previous flagship was the SD1 and it was a beautiful car. Echoes of the design really from the Ferrari Daytona. It was also a good car, but production issues hampered its success, and by the beginning of the 80s, end of the 70s, Rover was looking for a replacement. At the same time, fortuitously, Honda was looking for a flagship car. Not just that, it was also looking for a way around the import quotas that were going to be imposed by the European Union. So it was really a potential marriage made in heaven. What would happen is Honda would help with design and expertise. They would jointly develop this new car, the chassis, together. And Honda would also get to have its own version of this car, which was basically the Honda Legend, assembled and made in Cowley, therefore circumventing the import quotas. Ironically though, this arrangement that initially seemed so convenient on all sides, and initially for quite a few years definitely did help Rover, eventually it was part of what helped bring the whole house of cards tumbling down. But more of that later. First, a bit of history of how this was developed. Now, although the platforms for these were developed jointly, the bodywork and the interiors were completely separate. So if you were to look at the two cars, there really isn't much external similarity that you can see. Originally launched in 1986 to quite wide acclaim, it would have had the M series engine, which was a 16-valve development of the O series, which goes back to the late 70s. The 825 and the Sterling used the Honda V6, and initially this was really well received in the United States as well. Unfortunately though, that success was pretty short-lived, because by the time the first couple of years had passed, it was seen in the JD survey that these cars had problems in terms of quality, reliability, and unfortunately sales nosedived, and that led to Rover completely pulling out of that market. This car is a facelift version, so made between 1991 and 1999, had a few differences. It was smoothed over. The original car had sharper lines. Obviously that grille stands out as well, which wasn't there previously, but it was really a time of resurgence and success for Rover, so much so that it became, in the UK, the best-selling executive car, beating the Granada, which for years previously had held that position. This one is an 820, well, it's the one to have really. It's an 820 fastback Vitesse. So it means it has the 2-litre T-series engine, which was an evolution of the M, and it's turbocharged. So 0 to 60, 7.3 seconds, about 195 horsepower. So let's take it out and see how it feels today. Are we ready for the power of the T-series? Let's go. These were considered to be quick cars at the time. They would have competed with things like the Tamer Turbo from Lancia. They would have 164, the 3-litre V6, I suppose. Sierra Cosworth, although that was a bit of a sportier car, I suppose, than this. And of course, the sort of various BMW products and so on. But, you know, 0 to 60, 7.3 seconds. I think it was slightly under. I think with overboost, the Lancia had 220 horsepower, 215. It was a little bit quicker than this. Really interestingly, when you sit here and you come in, the interior, the materials are pretty good. There's a little bit of fading on the wood there, which is a shame. It has these Recaro seats. Now, obviously, this is just the Vitesse version, and they are brilliant, as all Recaros are, but they're definitely a lot firmer than you would expect for a Rover, for what is supposed to be really a luxury car. Then again, this was their high-performance version. In the cabin, I've already mentioned the materials, the wood. It is very nice, but also there is a marked absence when you first glance around to a load of horrible buttons everywhere scattered around. On reflection, there's a couple of little things there for the clock, the hazard light, you've got the gear change lever, all to hand, good driving position, and then most of the buttons that would normally be all over the center console are just up here. And it works quite well because you don't have to look down to have a look at the various controls for the climate control. And there's also rear window wipe, various little things there. It all makes sense. It's all quite easy to decipher. Instruments are clear. So quite a good start really from the old Rover. And something else that affects me just being here is a sense of longing, because this was one of the last Rovers made when Rover was still British owned. The 75 came after this, a car which I now actually own as well, and it's a very good car. But really, although Rover, British Leyland, whatever you want to call it at the time, wasn't independent, it was owned then by British Aerospace, I think. It was still British. So this, although it has, actually, to be fair, it has a big Japanese influence in the chassis, but the way the car feels and so on, it really was engineered in a British way. So let's see how it goes down the road. Is it as quick as we think? Turbocharged lump, so 2,500 revs, foot down. You know what? It pulls really strongly. Unlike the Lancia, which my dad used to own, it's quite revvy, even though it's a turbo. I was expecting nothing below 3, and then once you hit 3, it's just a big wave of torque that just sort of surges forward. It's not like that. It's pretty progressive. Yes, it's quite flat around 2, seems to pick up around 2.5, 3, definitely, but it's not just like an on-off switch at all. It feels a lot sportier than I thought it would. The suspension is also firmer than you would credit. Body control is good. Very, very surprised. The speed of the steering is well judged, but it really is very light, and there doesn't seem to be a huge amount coming through. Although there's a sort of an underlying stiffness to the suspension because it keeps the body in check, it's good at dealing with the smaller bumps, so it still feels nice flowing down the road. At lower speeds, it's definitely stiffer than you'd think, but it feels like quite a well-sorted car. And I'm really shocked at how good it is to be, you know, you can fling it around and it's not bad. I was convinced that this would feel a bit like a boat. Not at all. The chassis feels great. It has double wishbone suspension at the front. Rover weren't keen on that, I think, for cost issues, but also because it was it would, you know, give you more interior room if you used like a strut setup. Honda insisted, and I'm glad they did, because this is really, really rather good. That is odd. Gear change is fine, you know, a little bit rubbery perhaps, but it's quite short, really easy to engage gears, quite light. Oh my God, I was not expecting it at all to actually be good. I honestly wasn't. I mean, I was getting ready to say that obviously it had its good points and so on, but it's really not bad to throw around at all. Okay, let's just go through the gears again. And then I'm really going to throw it around that S-bend because it just feels like it can handle it. Also, not getting a lot of torque steer, which you definitely did get in the Lancia and also in the 164 with the V6 engines. So the way they've set this engine up really is excellent. Yeah, still relatively quick. That revvy engine is a revelation for a turbo of this time. Nice, crisp cornering, good grip. Oh my God. Gear change is lovely. Okay, let's just... Good grip at the front as well. Okay, if you've never driven one of these, I don't know what's going on, but if you've never driven one of these, you have to drive it because you will be surprised. Now, Steve, who owns this car, he also has Abingdon Car Restoration, so he works on MGs, MGBs, RV8s mainly, also dabbles in these cars, so I'll put the link up here. But he bought this, I think, for not too much money, and it's got 76,000 miles on it pretty much, and he's done a little bit of work to it, and I think he's going to smarten it up a bit. And no wonder that this was such a good seller in the UK. It's a shame. Obviously, the American market was really intrinsic, I think, for Rover's survival, and gallingly, while the Honda Legend, which is really the same car in many ways, kept on selling really strongly in the US. I think it was sold as an Acura there. This didn't make it, and so it's obviously a problem of quality, but what a shame because it's a great car. Now this is the fastback, and I think that for a Rover, not ordinarily, maybe if you had the V6 version with the Honda engine and it was a bit more of a gentleman's express, the Sterling and so on, I think the saloon shape probably works a bit better for me overall. I think it looks a bit better, but these fastbacks, I guess if it's going to be a sportier car like this, that works really well. So really, it's a familiar story, I think, of the Brits making a good product, but then falling down when it comes to the production of that product, because I think this, by Rover standards at the time, this was a success, don't get me wrong, but I think it would have been a much better success if they could have translated the overall design, the positives of the design of the way that these drive over to quality of the end product. It would have done so much better than it did. Sadly, this partnership is also indirectly responsible for Rover's eventual death, because once BMW had bought them, they were still obliged to pay Honda royalties for the cars that they had developed jointly. This made it very difficult for Rover to turn over a profit and ultimately hastened BMW's exit. Now, if you'd like me to continue doing reviews on lovely quirky classics like this, please do subscribe because it really helps the channel. If you have a car, if you own a car that you would like me to review, please get in touch. This is the best way to arrange something. And lastly, thank you so much for watching, and I really look forward to seeing you for the next video. But a big thumbs up for the Rover 820, the Vitesse in particular, which is a much better car than most people would give it credit for.